International Men's Day. And today we are going to go from Canada to Mumbai, India, with Dr. Akhil Shahani, who goes by the beautiful motto of educational entrepreneur. And he has a series of entrepreneur adventures in the education space. And he recently also completed his PhD. And a topic that Akhil did a deep dive into was self-efficacy. Akhil, welcome to International Men's Day, and thank you very much for joining us. What is self-efficacy, and in what ways is it relevant to men and boys?
Okay, well, great to be here, Dave, and I think it's something I always enjoy having conversation with you whenever I'm on board. When I talk about the concept of self-efficacy, it's actually related to the idea of self-belief, right? The thing is, it's like saying that if you believe you can achieve something, then you actually make an effort to do it. So my research is in the area of employability, and what our research discovered was that basically, if you really want to develop the capabilities of being successful in terms of developing your ability to collaborate, ability to problem solve, ability to constantly learn, you first have to start with the spark. And the spark is self-efficacy, the belief that you can do it, right? So the idea basically is that unless you're able to develop self-efficacy within yourself, or you have it inborn, which a lot of lucky people do, if you have that self-efficacy, then by default, you will be able to achieve a lot more things in your life than people who don't have self-efficacy. It's like saying that if you believe you can do it, you can do it. If you don't believe you can do it, you can't do it. Your belief is what keeps it happening.
There's a very famous saying that whatever the mind can conceive and believe, it can
Right.
achieve.
Exactly.
And so when you're working with people, and again, I love the idea that you're really making it relevant for employability. What
Right.
are one or two of the areas that people who might not believe in themselves, their parents never believed in themselves, what are one or two ways that really can assist, perhaps even a listener today, assist them in that journey of self-belief?
Okay, great. So, the way to look at it, the way to develop self-efficacy is what's called mastery experiences, right? The experience of actually trying a difficult idea or a difficult project or a difficult activity and mastering it, and then get a sense of self-belief and self-belief that, hey, I can actually do it because you've achieved something difficult. And let me give an example from the world of mobile gaming, because all of us have played games on our phone, right? Or like on our Xboxes or whatever. But the funny thing is about gaming is that nobody pays you to game. No, you actually can spend hours a day gaming and just getting caught up in a game. But what is interesting about the concept of gaming is that you start with a basic level of difficulty, right? And you actually try to solve the problem or solve the challenge, whatever it is. And once you cross that level, you get a little dopamine hit that, hey, I've actually achieved that. I feel good about myself. And that makes you move to the next level and the next level and the next level. So what happens if you look at developing your self-belief that you can do better and better at the game, and you see a lot of these games, in fact, a lot of young boys and a lot of young men who actually sit for hours on gaming actually have a great amount of self-belief that, hey, we can do very well in this game. In fact, they take part in clans, and they're very, very good at believing themselves and saying, we are brilliant at this game. But the minute they go out into the real world and say, look, I don't think I can actually go out and get a job, or I can go out and get that girlfriend or boyfriend for me, or I can't do this or that, because they view that life is not a game. The minute you start viewing that life is a game, and what happens is that you say, look, I want to move from, let's say, this level to this level, and I have to put my efforts to, and once I achieve that level, I get the dopamine hit, and then I believe that I can move to the next level and the next level. So it goes to the larger picture, the saying that if you take your life as a game, and each activity in that game to be a puzzle to solve, a small challenge. And again, I'm getting a little philosophical and probably my Indian roots that says that at the end of the game, we all go back to the same, the game ends for everybody, no matter how rich, how brilliant you are, you will end the game the same way, just dead in the ground. The point is that while you are in the game of life, how you experiencing yourself, and as you start getting more and more self-belief that, hey, I can achieve these small, small things, and because it's just a game, that is something that could give you a great move, a great way of actually making your life much more successful, and self-belief becomes intrinsic. Because everybody is good at something, no matter what. It's just a matter of realizing that you can be good at anything if you believe you can.
That's fantastic. And it just, life is a game. So for someone who's watching today, if they have that little shift that life is a game, and getting a good job is a game, and maybe dating or even getting married is a game. There's an element there that it's not flippant like games. People who play professional games, professional sports, play it at a very high level. There's discipline, there's commitment, there's hard work involved. And so you're infusing this idea in education in India. It's fantastic to hear an educator that wants kids to use games as a way to learn, to grow, to build confidence and belief. And so in what ways are you doing that? Because I have a feeling you're doing some pilot projects that allow that philosophy yet practical approach to be infused in the education and employability in India. What would be an example of one or two?
Well, actually, right. So I think, so just to put my academic hat on and get into the whole PhD mode, there was a researcher called Albert Bandura, which did a lot of research on the concept of self-efficacy, right? And he said that if you really want to build someone to be self-efficacious, there are four things you need, right? One is a mastery experience, which I just spoke about. Secondly, a coach or someone who actually is there with you to positively push you on. The third is actually someone to believe in. Like, for example, very often a mentor or an idol or someone that you say, look, I want to be like that man or that woman. I believe that if they can do it, I can do it myself. So that's the third thing. And the fourth thing, of course, is an environment that accepts if you fail, your head's not going to be chopped off. You actually will be able to try and fail and try and fail and keep moving forward. So just to repeat, a mastery experience, that means a project that allows you to extend your capabilities, a coach who actually can sort of help you along the path. The third thing is a role model to work towards, be like that person. And the fourth thing is an environment that allows for failure. In fact, the funny thing is, and again, getting into you see a lot of environments like, let's say, Silicon Valley, for example, a lot of that stuff is present because people are very tech savvy. They actually like to solve problems in technology. Very often there are mentors or professional coaches or executive coaches or people that they follow. Of course, there are a lot of examples that they can look at, like the Silicon Valley tech bros and the rich kids they can follow. And of course, more importantly, Silicon Valley, the environment that people can fail, and if you fail, you still will have a chance to get another job or get another business, right? So the same thing, what we're trying to do in our colleges is essentially trying to do the same environment. We say that, look, if we want to teach, let's say, the concept of, let's say, mutual funds, right, in the finance industry, we don't just say, okay, look, here's the mutual fund, this is what it is, blah, blah, blah. It's more like, okay, if you know about mutual funds, can you find a way to sell mutual funds? So therefore, can we give you some exercises to become, let's say, a good salesperson to sell it to someone? Because it's not the point of employability is not just about the theory, it's about the application of the theory to a practical example. So when we are giving the student the problem of trying to sell this mutual fund to, let's say, another person, and the other person will be another student, there'll be a lot of these sort of role plays going on where one person is trying to be the salesperson, the other person student, the third person is sort of like critiquing the sales. However, the facilitator, and we call the person the facilitator, not a teacher or a lecturer. The facilitator is someone just sort of encouraging that person that, hey, okay, Dave, maybe you could find a way to sell this better. Maybe you could say it this way instead of that way. So that mentor is always there. The facilitator always has high expectations of the student and also coaches the student to keep on moving forward. Then, of course, we do have the other aspects of, let's say, examples of successful students who've done very well in the jobs after they graduated from us. So you say, look, you have entered our program. Imagine the guy who entered last year behind you, where is he today? Or the people who graduated 3 years ago, what they're doing. So something to move towards. And of course, again, this is a big thing, a big mind shift from the academic program in India, is that if you fail, that's not a bad thing. It's not that you have a final exam and out of 100, you will get 40% or 50% or 60 or 90%. The point is, we will give you tougher and tougher assignments. You can try them, you can fail, you can try them as many times as you want until you know you've succeeded. And suddenly that gives people a sense of a huge amount of self-belief or self-efficacy that they can actually achieve the thing. And just to give you a further case, and I mentioned this to you earlier, is that we have a foundation where we're taking kids from rural agricultural families, blue-collar families. They come from environments where their parents or their community have got a very low, sort of like low expectation of them. They say that, look, you'll never be able to do anything. You're a farmer's son. You'll always be a farmer's son. You'll never move away. just sit down, shut up, and just be where you are. What we do, we take these kids, and through the model that I explained to you just now, we're able to get them high-flying jobs in banks or financial institutions, investment banks, other companies, because we build that self-efficacy first. The self-efficacy is what drives their willingness to then to build their communication skills to be better, their collaboration skills, their problem solving to be better. But I can't teach them collaboration, communication skills, or problem solving until I've got their self-efficacy up and running. So this is a route that starts the rest of the branches going.
That's it's such a beautiful bridge that you're building. You're building it from a person to develop some mastery. And I love the idea of video games because if
Yeah,
video games can be used as a model and they've already established a certain level, and perhaps they're much higher than you or I, instance, they
exactly.
then have confidence to go and be willing to learn new things because they have this record that they've learned and achieved a high level of competency. So that's fantastic. And it's a great example also that you've studied a theory and now you're putting it to practice. What's been a lesson you've had from sort of going from theory into practice in some of the learning cycles that you're having while orchestrating it or conducting it as you move forward?
Well, obviously, the thing is that I myself am sort of like experimenting on myself. The thing is that as I am helping other people to learn through failure, I've learned through a lot of failure over the last, 30 or 35 years of my professional career. So the thing is that obviously the ideas that I'm espousing today didn't come out suddenly sprouting out of my forehead like Athena from Zeus, right? The thing is that they're not perfectly formed. We actually had to develop them. So a lot of research that I was doing in my PhD was actually analyzing, okay, fine, what are we doing? What's working? What's not working? We had many iterations of the whole thing. In fact, our very first mistake was to actually use existing academic teachers to sort of implement this model because they were so fixed into their own patterns. For them to be a facilitator instead of just being that sage on the stage, just lecturing down to the students, that was a major shift that we had to make in them. And that was difficult. So we said, let's forget that. Let's get people who are corporate trainers, people who work in industry. Interestingly, people who want to teach but don't have the experience of teaching. If you bring them an environment where they are open-minded, then they actually do better as facilitators. They say, "Wow, this is so natural." It's like saying that when you are talking to a bunch of your friends, right? You have such a great joy just sharing with your friends some new idea that you come up with, or it's a conversation, right? It's not just you sitting and droning on for 30 minutes in a bar with people listening. You actually have people asking you questions, interacting with you, saying, okay, fine, and Dave, instead of saying this, you think this works better. So suddenly, that's a very natural way of learning. And if you understand how human beings have learned for thousands of years, it's through this concept of peer learning, right? So the thing is that we had to sort of go back in time and say, let's forget about the classic factory model of scale and pushing people through classes. Let's go back to the peer learning model. And of course, it took us time to really realize that. And then that is what sort of got us moving to making these people better at being more self-efficacious and better what they do. Another thing that we learn, and this is something that as we are talking to employers, people are getting more and more data obsessed, right? So they said, okay, look, you're saying that your kids are more employable than other kids, right? How do we know that? Prove it to us. I mean, it's not enough to say, okay, here, try with the kid. They say, look, we don't want to try with the kid. You tell us through numbers or something. So we actually had to create frameworks for these bean counters in the company that say, look, we actually are able to show that, okay, the kids' communication level is from, let's say, going from, let's say, 2 out of 10 to, let's say, 8 out of 10, or the collaboration going from, let's say, 3 out of 10 to 7 out of 10. The thing is, we actually had psychological tests and measures that showed how the kid was progressing, and we can actually show that data. What is interesting is that there's this old Peter Drucker phrase called "what can be measured can be managed," right? So what we
Yes.
said and what we realized, and this was an insight that we had around a few years ago, is that the reason why, even though employers have always said we want a certain type of employable candidate, right? The best colleges in the world were not even able to do that, right? I mean, forget about the Harvard and stuff like that. Globally, you'll be surprised to hear this that almost 73% of employers globally, not just in India, even in the US, UK, Australia, wherever, Canada, have said that we're not happy with the quality of graduates coming out. Why? Because the employers are asking for a certain personality type, right? The colleges are trying to train people for exams. they're using different measures. So what has happened is that most employers don't have the language to explain what they want, because if they say we want an employable candidate, most of the time they say, we want someone who's got ambition, got someone who's dynamic, someone who get the job done, a lot of qualitative phrases, but no measures. The colleges, on the other hand, are saying, look, you're not giving me something to work towards. So we have exams and that's it. Now give me something else to work towards that works at scale and something I can do to train my 20,000 kids across all industries. And industries not come up with that. So what we said is that when we started applying this data framework, we created something called the ASK benchmarks, the attitude, skills, knowledge benchmark, where we measure kids on these 5 parameters of employability, which through our research we came up with. And the parameters are quite easy. It's communication skills, collaboration, critical thinking, proactiveness, and professionalism. Because funnily, it's very difficult to measure self-efficacy, even though that's the root of all of this. But to develop these traits, self-efficacy has to be the lighting match, the thing that starts to move on that. And then we created data sets around of this and trained people on these characteristics, and the rest is all history. But the point is that a lot of learnings we had to do by trying and failing to see what works, what doesn't work. And just another point before we move to the next question. Interestingly, not a single recruiter says we want a highly creative, highly intelligent individual at the entry level, because the unfortunate, let's say the grim reality is that most recruiters want to hire people at the entry level. People get the job done with least amount of training, least amount of supervision. They don't want a guy coming and say, hey, I know this theory. I think it can be done in a better way. They just want to sit down and shut, no matter what they talked about in HR journals and business books. Most of the time, the entry level employers say, look, just get the job done. Don't ask me questions. Yes, when you've worked for a few years and you move to, let's say, junior middle management, then you can start asking questions. But right now, don't ask questions. So, we learned that. We got a few of our ideals sort of crushed a bit.
That's great learning cycles. And what you're demonstrating for anyone who's hearing and listening right now is that even the highest level of businesses and academia, the ones that are being most effective right now are maybe even disrupting the old model and starting new models and refreshing. And what is really required? What are the skills required? What are the abilities that are required? That's fantastic, Akhil. Thank you for sharing those specific examples, because I'm really hoping our listeners today get a greater feeling as they don't need to be perfect. In fact, it's that fail fast, fail frequently, fail forward that Steve Jobs was a major proponent with. And so I realize that some students will fall off and perhaps go into levels of depression, Akhil. And I guess my question is, in building resilience, in building up your students' resilience and self-efficacy, what are one or two ways that you have seen that can assist a student that might be suffering from depression or in a funk or in a spiral down, in building their resilience and perhaps even reframing the experience with being depressed or sad as right. part of the process to develop resiliency or self-efficacy?
So interestingly, when you look at a lot of the causes of depression, I'm not a psychologist myself, but I do know from what I've spoken to a lot of people, is that most of depression is really the state of mind that says that, look, I want to be at this certain level, right? Or let's say I want to be this. I am currently not here, I am here. I mean, whatever this is, right? So there's a big gap between what my ideal life should be and what I am. So, and it could be like, for example, I may not fast enough to run this race, or I may not be slim enough to look good enough to get the girl, or I may not have the brains enough to pass the exam. In all cases, it's more about the fact that, look, I am not good enough. Therefore, I'm depressed. Because depression also says it's not just the fact that you're not good enough, but also you don't have a way to overcome that deficiency. That's really it. And then you get that cycle of doom that says, okay, what's the point of doing anything? And they go down and down and down. Again, I'm not talking about clinical depression, which is more like a chemical related, but this is more like a mindset thing. And of course, it doesn't help if you have people around you saying, yeah, you're stupid, you're an idiot, and that unfortunately tends to happen in a lot of family environments. So I think the starting point is to understand that how to get people to get away from the idea of saying that, okay, fine, only if I am at this level am I good. It's getting people to be aware that where you are is good, it's perfect. You are perfect the way you are today. Now the question is, what game do you want to play tomorrow? So, I'm just actually, I was actually having an interesting chat with someone, I think a couple of weeks ago, right? And we were discussing the concept of what does it mean to be a man? Like, we're talking about International Man's Day, right? So what does it mean to be a man? Now, when you look at, and I think this is like, I don't know if it's actually true or not, they say that Tinder has 47 different genders, right? Or from what I understand correctly, right? That means that you can, even if you're born biologically with the XY chromosome, right? You can choose to be who you want, right? And that's okay in a lot of cultures, right? So the question of what is interesting is that what it means to be a man is not what society tells you, it's what you tell yourself. So if you choose to identify as, let's say, I'm not a cisgender man, I am, let's say, I want to be someone else, I want to be in a different body, whatever, that is your choice. But what is interesting is that that means that what it means to be a man is up to you, not up to society. So then you go back to your whole state of mind with depression. It's like saying that what I believe is that what is the right body shape for me is what I am. If I want to change it, I will change it. Nobody else can tell me that I have to look like that model in GQ, right? Or somebody says, okay, look, you have to be scoring, let's say, 95% in the exams. No, I'm happy scoring 60% because I'm good at doing something else, right? Or let's say, like, and the great joke is Sundar Pichai of, if you heard that joke from Google. So Sundar Pichai says that, my mom called me just a couple of days ago and said, that Sunak uncle's son, Rishi Sunak, is now the Prime Minister of the UK, and he's 4 years younger than you. You're just the CEO of a trillion-dollar company. When are you going to move ahead? So there's always be someone to tell you that you're not good enough. The point is, if you start appreciating that you are good enough, regardless of what people think, that is the first step to moving towards building up self-efficacy and getting out of depression. Like, you are great as you are.
That's again, for anyone who might be not feeling good about themselves, it's really great advice or guidance by an educator, and it's about first acknowledging and being kind to yourself, perhaps, and then the next phase is, well, what would I like to do to improve, and what would I like to learn, and you start on that journey of being more of a lifelong learner as opposed to somebody who just beats yourself up. And it might be, again, your parent, it might be a teacher who that's what their approach has been, is to sort of beat people down to get them to rise up. You have the opportunity to work on yourself and to be kind to yourself, and then to continue to work. Is there any other tips that you might have, Akhil, for lifelong learners, for men going through a challenge, developing resilience, developing greater self-esteem, self-confidence, in your research right now or practical experience? What would be one or two sort of final tips that you would be able to share with our listeners today?
Well, I think also, like, the other dimension is beyond saying life is a game. I think life is a continuous learning, right? The thing is that your education is not in the classroom. Your education is not in the books that you read. Your education is in every interaction that you have with people around you. In the time that you played football and fell down, skinned your knees. In the time that you tried to ask someone out for a date and you failed. Everything is a learning experience, because the thing is that if you say, look, instead of saying that, hey, I failed, you say that, look, what can I learn from this? And look at every experience. And ideally, if you say, you wake up every day in the morning, say, look, what are one or two things I can learn today? And it could be anything. It could be in terms of saying that, okay, hey, Mrs. Smith, my neighbor next door, tends to be a little cranky if I play the music at, let's say, 11 o'clock at night. It's a learning versus saying she's cranky and I don't like her. Again, if you shifted everything as a learning experience, because you're learning to play the game of life, suddenly the world opens up. Because, and the third thing again is that the game that you play is your game. Dave, your game is Dave's game. Akhil's game is Akhil's game. John's game is John's game. Dave can't play John's game. John can't play Dave's game. And Dave cannot tell John, okay, you better play the game this way because this is the only game in town. And those of us who are active on, let's say, iPhone or Android, there are millions of games out there. Who's to say if you want to download Candy Crush or Angry Birds or, I don't know, World of Warcraft? It's your game, your choice. You decide how to play it.
That is a great way to bring this session to a completion, Akhil. I really appreciate your time, your wisdom and your experience. And thank you so much for sharing International Men's Day with us today.
Thank you very much, Dave. I really had a great time and really appreciate your spending this time together to share ideas with each other.